Thank you indeed. Can I ask Suhel to say a few words? Yeah? He's raring to go. Come, Suhel.
No, I was just worried for you because I thought he'd just read the whole book out. And it might impact the sales of the book. But Anup, as you know as you can see, has been very, very senior to me. He's very old now, but it doesn't show in his articulation, which is still brilliant. I have to say, I've never owned a stock market account, whatever the hell it's called, demat or whatever. So I'm not familiar with the stock market. But yes, one is familiar with two things here. Number one, Shantanu, I've known from Calcutta. He is an investigative journalist, but not in the garb of writing what he's told, but actually digging deep. And I think, I haven't read the book either, so, when you read the book, from whatever one has just gone through it, it's loaded with supporting facts, which a lot of authors tend to ignore, mostly at the peril of their readers. The second is, it is no amazing fact that in India, the nexus will and always remains. I think what this present government is trying to achieve is to break this nexus. Industry can't be encouraged at the point of a gun. Neither can policies, as Anup rightly said, be whimsical and be flip-flop. I remember we've lived through times when the heinous and retrograde step taken by Chidambaram qua Vodafone was instituted. And this country hasn't stopped suffering since. I mean, I can't mention the president, but it was the president who was the then finance minister who took that decision of going back on policies as far back as 1963. I think this is a book which tells you about the facetiousness with which industry is treated and with which industry allows itself to be treated by. I'm a great believer, you don't need to crawl when you're asked to walk. But Indian industry almost always wants to crawl when asked to walk because they, at some stage or the other, have taken a sense of entitlement for granted. They've appealed for privileges, they've been bestowed with favors, and I believe that that mood of this country is changing. Why? There's greater probity, there's greater transparency. He mentioned Harish Salve. Harish has been meticulous. If you see the back of the book, the blurbs, there are two particular blurbs which are attributable to the judgments of two different judges. It's quite apparent that not only was there no discretion, and there was almost whimsical behavior on part of the government at that time, whoever it was, but there was also the pursuit of an agenda. The tragedy is, in any country, if you're agenda-driven, policy falters and policy is sacrificed. If policy is sacrificed, consistency goes for a toss. If consistency goes for a toss, people's investment suffers. I know what Vodafone wanted to invest in India and how they stayed away. I know what's exactly happening in the landscape of large companies. Here you had a man, as the book will identify with facts, who created an enterprise. It takes forever to set up an exchange. He created 10 world-class exchanges, including in countries like Singapore, which, by the way, are far more probity-driven and transparent than we are. And suddenly, the business goes for a toss. I have never, ever faced the number of calls and the trollers on Twitter advising me to stay away from the book launch. When I looked at the Twitter handles, these were all manipulated Twitter handles, including calls that one received, saying, why are you attending this book launch? Are you with him? Are you this? Are you that? I said, I'm attending the book launch because it's exactly that, a book launch. There's a case in the courts of law. The courts will decide on what is right and what is wrong. We must be civil enough, tolerant enough, liberal enough to actually accept thoughts which emerge from the edifice of facts. And that's why this book is here. I will end by saying that sometimes we take 2 steps forward to only take 3 backwards. We need a more definitive articulation of government behavior. We need a more measured stance of governments in public life. We need governments to stay out of business. We need authoritarianism to be replaced by liberal and fair thought. Ultimately, and as Amartya Sen brilliantly said, justice is only about fairness. It's not about the niti, it's about the nyaya. I'm not as erudite to quote Churchill, Spencer, Voltaire, and the very other many people that my good friend Anup Bose, who we lovingly call Professor Bose, has quoted, but I will just leave you with one thought. The mind must be held high. The tragedy is we are always aiming at bringing down people who are successful. That sadly has become the DNA of most parts of our country. That needs to change. Three of us are from Calcutta. In Calcutta, we only worry about two things: food and food. There is no competitive behavior which destroys people. We know it's better to be dead through cholesterol rather than by worrying about killing people who are successful in their businesses. Our lives revolve around the kati roll and not around the knife. Thank you and have a splendid evening.